HOA burned down my farm to force a solemnly explosive response left the board in shock. The air was thick with the scent of scorched earth and betrayal. My farm, my sanctuary, my life's work, was a smoldering ruin. The fields that once swayed with golden wheat were now blackened stubs, curling like broken promises under the relentless sun. The barn, where I'd spent countless nights tending to my animals, was a skeleton of charred beams. And the farmhouse god, the farmhouse where my kids grew up, where my wife and I danced to old records on rainy evenings, was nothing but ash and memory. All of it, gone in a single night. The HOA did this. They burned it all to force me out. But they didn't know who they were messing with. My name is Amos Reed, and I don't bend. I break things. It started 6 months ago, when the Karen HOIs, that's what we called them, a pack of clipboard-wielding busybodies who ruled our little rural community like it was their personal fiefdom, decided my farm was an eyesore. Never mind that it had been in my family for 3 generations, feeding folks, sheltering strays, and standing firm through floods and droughts. To them, it was unkempt. To them, my sprawling acres of wildflowers and free-roaming chickens didn't fit their vision of manicured lawns and cookie-cutter McMansions. They wanted progress. They wanted a golf course, a gated community, a shiny new development to inflate their property values. And my farm? It was in the way. The letters started innocently enough. Polite notices about community standards and property maintenance. I ignored them. I wasn't part of their HOA, never signed their covenant. My land was grandfathered in, free from their rules. That's when the visits began. Karen number 1 Linda Grayson, with her peroxide blonde bob and a smile sharp enough to cut glass, would show up at my gate, clipboard in hand, pointing out my violations. Too many chickens, unmowed grass, a tractor that clashed with the aesthetic. I'd laugh, tip my hat, and tell her to get off my property. She'd leave, but her eyes promised war. Then the fines came. Thousands of dollars for nonsense infractions they had no right to enforce. I tossed those in the fire too. But Linda and her minions didn't stop. They escalated. They called the county, claiming my farm was a health hazard. They sent inspectors, who found nothing but healthy animals and fertile soil. They lobbied the town council, whispering about eminent domain. I fought back, showing up at meetings, my boots still caked with dirt, quoting property laws older than their subdivision. I thought I was winning. I was wrong. The night of the fire, I was in town, picking up feed. My wife, Clara, was visiting her sister, and the kids were long grown, scattered across the country. The farm was empty except for the animals. I got the call at 2 a.m. from Old Man Jenkins, my nearest neighbor, his voice shaking. "Amos, your place is burning." I drove home at 90 miles an hour, my heart pounding louder than the engine. When I arrived, flames were devouring everything. The fire department was there, but they moved slow, almost leisurely, like they'd been told to let it burn. I screamed at them, demanded answers, but they just shrugged. By dawn, my life was ash. The next day, Linda showed up with a developer in tow, a slick guy in a suit named Trevor, who reeked of cologne and opportunism. He offered me a check, a generous sum to sell the land. I tore it up and threw it in his face. Linda's smile didn't falter. "Think about it, Amos," she said. "Fires happen. Insurance will cover it. Take the money and start over." Her voice was syrupy, but her eyes were cold. I knew then. They'd done it. The HOA had torched my farm to force me out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes people nervous. Clara begged me to walk away, to take the insurance money and leave. But this wasn't just about land. It was about legacy, about standing up to bullies who thought they could burn a man's life down and walk away clean. I started digging. I talked to Jenkins, who'd seen a strange truck near my property that night. I tracked down a firefighter who admitted, off the record, that the blaze looked like arson accelerants, multiple ignition points. I even found a gas can in the woods, half buried, with fingerprints that didn't belong to me. The sheriff, a spineless man in Linda's pocket, wouldn't investigate. So I did. That's when I met Ruby. She was the twist I didn't see coming. Ruby was a barista at the local diner, a wiry girl with purple hair and a chip on her shoulder. She'd overheard Linda and Trevor at the counter one night, bragging about clearing the way for their project. Ruby didn't like Linda, nobody did, but Ruby had history. Turns out, Linda had gotten her fired from her last job for daring to park her beat-up Honda in the wrong spot at the community center. Ruby was itching for payback, and she had something I needed, a knack for hacking. She'd taught herself to code, sneaking into systems for fun. I didn't ask how she got Linda's emails. I just read them. The emails were a goldmine. Linda and Trevor had planned the fire, hired a guy named Mitch, a drifter with a rap sheeto, do the dirty work. They'd paid him in cash, funneled through a shell company. There were even messages about bribing the sheriff to look the other way. It was all there, in black and white, their arrogance laid bare. They thought they were untouchable. They thought I'd fold. They didn't know Amos Reed. I spent weeks planning. I didn't tell Clarash to worry herself sick. Ruby became my shadow, digging deeper, finding blueprints for the proposed development, financial records, even a draft press release announcing the tragic loss of my farm and the exciting new chapter for the community. Every word fueled my rage, but I kept it cold, focused. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make them feel what I felt: helpless, cornered, burned. The HOA's annual meeting was their big stage, where Linda and her cronies paraded their power. The whole town showed up, packed into the community center like sardines. I wasn't on the agenda, but I didn't need an invitation. Ruby had hacked their projector system, and I had a flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. When Linda took the stage, all smiles and fake tears, talking about community progress and hinting at my unfortunate accident, I made my move. I stood up, my voice cutting through her speech like a scythe. "You burned my farm, Linda." The room went silent. She laughed, nervous, dismissing me as a crank. That's when I nodded to Ruby, who was lurking in the back. The projector flickered, and there it was. Their emails, blown up on the screen for everyone to see. Line after line of their conspiracy dates, payments, Mitch's name. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Linda's face turned gray. Trevor bolted for the door, but Jenkins and a few others blocked his path. Small-town loyalty runs deep when you've been wronged. I didn't stop there. I played a recording Ruby had pulled from Linda's phony, a voicemail from Mitch, slurring about the fire, demanding more money to keep quiet. The room erupted. People shouted, some at Linda, some at me, but I didn't care. I laid out the evidence: the gas can, the firefighter's statement, the paper trail. I told them how my animals died, how my wife's heart broke, how my kids would never come home to the place they loved. I didn't yell. I didn't have to. My words were fire enough. Linda tried to spin it, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Someone threw a shoe. Another called for the sheriff who, conveniently, was nowhere to be seen. I saw fear in Linda's eyes for the first time, and it felt good. Too good. That's when Ruby grabbed my arm, whispering, "Ease up, Amos. You've got them." She was right. I'd won. Or so I thought. The fallout was swift. The state police got involved, thanks to Ruby leaking the evidence online. Linda and Trevor were arrested, along with Mitch, who sang like a canary for a plea deal. The HOA was dissolved, its assets frozen. The town rallied around me, offering to help rebuild. Clara came home, her eyes soft with pride but heavy with worry. For a moment, it felt like justice. But life doesn't wrap up neat like a movie. The insurance company dragged its feet, claiming the fire was suspicious. The land was still mine, but it was worthless, blackened, barren, haunted. And me? I was hollowed out, a man who'd won a war but lost his home. Then came the final twist, the one that broke me. Ruby disappeared. I went to the diner one morning, expecting her usual smirk and a coffee refill, but she was gone. Her apartment was empty, her phone disconnected. At first, I thought she'd just skipped town. Ruby was a drifter at heart. But then I found a note slipped under my door, in her jagged handwriting. "Amos, I'm sorry. I had to. Check the shell company." I did. Buried in the financials was a name I hadn't noticed before: Clara Reed. My Clara. She'd been a silent partner in the developer's scheme, skimming a cut to secure our retirement. She'd known about the fire. She'd let it happen. I confronted her that night, the note shaking in my hand. She didn't deny it. Tears streamed down her face as she begged me to understand she'd done it for us, for our kids, for a future free from debt and dirt. She'd thought I'd take the money and move on. She hadn't counted on me fighting back. I looked at the woman I'd loved for 30 years and saw a stranger. I walked out, the door slamming shut on our life together. The town thinks I'm a hero. The man who took down the HOA, they don't know I sleep in my truck now, staring at the stars through a cracked windshield. They don't know my victory cost me everything, me farm, my wife, my faith in people. The land is still mine, but it's a graveyard of dreams. I could rebuild, but what's the point? The HOA burned my farm, but Clara burned my heart. And that's a fire no one can put out. The days after Clara's confession blurred into a haze of grief and grit. I couldn't look at her without seeing the fire, the lies, the years we'd built together crumbling like my barn. She packed a bag and left for her sisters, her sobs echoing in the empty motel room I'd rented. I didn't stop her. I couldn't. My heart was a scorched field, and I didn't know if anything would ever grow there again. But I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The HOA was down, but the developer's parent company, some faceless corporation called Horizon Ventures, was still circling my land like vultures. They hadn't burned me out, but they weren't giving up. Neither was I. I spent my days combing through Ruby's files, the one she'd left on a USB drive tucked inside her note. The girl was a ghost now, but her work was alive: spreadsheets, emails, even grainy security footage from a gas station showing Mitch buying the accelerants. Ruby had been thorough, obsessive, like she knew she wouldn't stick around to see the endgame. Her note haunted me. Check the shell company. Clara's name was just the tip of the iceberg. Horizon Ventures had tendrils everywhere: local officials, county clerks, even a state senator who'd pushed for rural redevelopment, grants that conveniently funneled money to their projects. My farm wasn't just a plot of dirt to them. It was a domino, and they'd burn 100 more to make it fall. I needed help, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Jenkins offered his guest room, but I stayed in my truck, too raw to accept kindness. The town buzzed with gossip. Some called me a hero, others a fool for not taking the payout. I ignored it all and focused on Horizon. Their CEO, a guy named Victor Hargrove, was a phantom, all polished press releases and no substance. But Ruby's files gave me an angle. Hargrove was set to speak at a regional development conference in Raleigh, a glitzy event where he'd pitch Horizon's vision of modernizing rural America. My land was on their map, a red star labeled Future Site, Fairway Estates. I decided to crash their party. Getting in wasn't easy. The conference was invite only, crawling with suits and security. I cleaned up as best I could, borrowed a blazer from Jenkins, shaved the stubble that had grown wild, and bluffed my way past the registration desk with a fake name and a story about being a small-town investor. Inside, it was a different world: crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, people laughing about profit margins while my life lay in ruins. Hargrove took the stage, a tall man with a politician's smile, droning about community transformation. I waited, my flash drive heavy in my pocket, until the Q&A. I stood, my voice steady but loud enough to turn heads. "Mr. Hargrove, how do you justify burning a man's farm to force a sale?" The room froze. Hargrove chuckled, deflecting with some nonsense about unfounded rumors. That's when I moved. Ruby had taught me a trick: most conference AV systems were networked, vulnerable to a simple USB override. I slipped my drive into a tech booth I'd scouted earlier, and the screen behind Hargrove lit up with Linda's emails, the gas station footage, and a new gem Ruby had uncovered. A memo from Hargrove himself, authorizing aggressive acquisition tactics for problematic properties. My farm was listed by name. Chaos erupted. Reporters in the crowd started snapping photos. Attendees whispered, some outraged, others gleeful at the scandal. Hargrove's smile vanished, his face paling as he stammered denials. Security grabbed me, but I didn't resist. I'd done what I came for. By the next morning, the story was viral: local news, then national, with headlines like "Corporate Greed Torches Family Farm." Horizon stock tanked. Hargrove stepped down, citing health reasons. Lawsuits multiplied, and the feds started sniffing around their finances. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was tired. Back home, the town was different. People stopped me at the diner, offering handshakes, free pies, even donations to rebuild. I nodded, mumbled thanks, but kept my distance. Clara called again, leaving voicemails I deleted unheard. I couldn't face her, not yet. Maybe not ever. My kids reached out to Ethan from Florida, Sophie from Oregon, begging me to move in with them. I told them I wasn't ready to leave the land. It was all I had left, even if it was just dirt and ghosts. Then came the second twist, the one that nearly undid me. Jenkins showed up at my truck one evening, his face grim, holding a letter. It was from Ruby, postmarked from some nowhere town in Montana. She was alive, but running. The letter was short, cryptic. Amos, I'm sorry I bailed. Horizon's bigger than you know. They've got people everywhere. Clara wasn't the only one on their payroll. Check your deed. Forgive her if you can. My deed? I hadn't thought about it since the fire. It was in a safe deposit box at the bank, untouched. I drove there at dawn, my hands shaking as I opened the box. The deed was there, but it wasn't clean. Tucked behind it was an amendment, filed a year ago, transferring partial ownership to a Horizon subsidiary. Clara's signature was on it, notarized. She hadn't just taken a cut, sold a stake in my land without telling me, thinking it would give in once the fire forced my hand. The amendment was shaky, likely illegal, given I hadn't consented, but it explained why Horizon kept coming. They thought they already owned me. I sat in the bank parking lot, the paper crumpling in my fist, and for the first time since the fire, I cried. Not for the farm, but for the woman I'd trusted, the life I thought we'd shared. I didn't confront Clara. I couldn't. Instead, I hired a lawyer, a scrappy one who'd seen the news and offered to take the case pro bono. She dug into the amendment, found it riddled with fraud, and filed to have it voided. Horizon fought dirty, dragging it out with countersuits, but the public was on my side. Petitions circulated, demanding justice. A crowdfunding campaign raised enough to start rebuilding not the whole farm, but a new barn, maybe a few animals. I let it happen, not for me, but for the town's spirit. Months passed, and the land stayed empty. I'd walk it sometimes, kicking at the ash, remembering the chickens clucking, the wheat whispering in the wind. I thought about Clara every day. She'd written again, a long letter this time, confessing everything, how Horizon had approached her years ago, promising a payout that would secure our future, how she'd been too ashamed to tell me, how she'd thought the fire would be a clean break. She didn't ask to come back, just said she'd wait. I was ready. I saw the fear in her words, the regret, and wondered if I could forgive her. I didn't know. I still don't. The final act came at another HOA meeting, or what was left of it, a ragtag group trying to reform the rules. I showed up, not to speak, but to listen. They'd invited a surprise guest, Mitch, the arsonist, out on parole. He'd cut a deal to testify against Horizon and wanted to make amends. He stood, head bowed, and told his story, how Linda had hired him, how he'd set the fire, how he'd spent every night since haunted by the animals he'd killed. He looked at me, eyes wet, and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. I didn't know it was your whole world." The room was split. Some forgave him, others cursed him. I just nodded. He was a pawn, like me, caught in Horizon's game. Hating him wouldn't bring my farm back. I left that meeting with a strange peace. Horizon was crumbling, their executives indicted, their projects stalled. My deed was clear again, the amendment voided. The land was mine, but it felt like a stranger's. I started small, planting a single row of wildflowers, the kind Clara loved. I bought one chicken, named her Hope, and built her a coop from salvaged wood. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Ruby sent another note, just 2 words, "You're still standing." I smiled, wondering where she was, hoping she'd found her own patch of dirt to call home. The ending isn't tidy. I'm still in my truck, still alone, still broken in ways I can't name. Clara's out there, waiting, and I don't know if I'll ever call her back. The farm's gone, and no amount of justice will bring it back. But I'm here, stubborn as ever, planting one seed at a time. The HOA burned my life down, and Horizon tried to bury me. They didn't know Amos Reed. I don't bend. I break things and then I build them again. What do you think? Was I right to fight, to expose the truth, even when it cost me everything? Should I forgive Clara, or is betrayal too deep a cut? Was Mitch redeemable, or just another cog in the machine? Share your thoughts. What's right, what's wrong, and where's the line?